The surveyor's metal detector screamed as it swept over the disputed patch of earth. Karen Williams, clutching her forged property documents, watched in horror as Dr. Sarah Chen knelt beside the freshly turned soil. "This isn't possible," Karen whispered, her face draining of color. Sarah's trembling hands lifted a massive, serrated fossil from the dirt, a Tyrannosaurus rex tooth, gleaming under the Montana sun. The discovery would make this worthless lot worth millions, but Karen's lies were about to unearth something. Father Morning Sun cast long shadows across the desolate stretch of land that Marcus Rodriguez had called home for the past 15 years. His modest ranch house sat on what most people considered worthless scrubland outside Billings, Montana. 40 acres of rocky soil, sparse grass, and endless sky. To Marcus, it was everything. He was repairing a section of fence when the black sedan pulled up his gravel driveway, dust billowing behind it like a storm cloud. Marcus straightened, hammer in hand, watching as a woman emerged from the driver's seat. She was impeccably dressed in a navy business suit that looked expensive and out of place against the rugged landscape. Her blonde hair was pulled back in, a severe bun, and she wore the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Mr. Rodriguez," she called out, her heels clicking against the rocky ground as she approached. "I'm Karen Williams from Williams & Associates Real Estate Development." Marcus set down his hammer and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Can I help you with something?" Karen's smile widened, but there was something predatory about it. "Actually, I'm here to help you. There's been a terrible mistake regarding your property ownership." "Excuse me." She opened a leather briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of documents. "I've recently discovered that this land, all 40 acres, actually, belongs to my client. The original deed transfer from 1987 was never properly filed. You've been living here illegally." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible. I've got all the paperwork. I bought this place from Old Henry Morrison fair and square, paid cash for it." "I'm sure you believe that," Karen said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "But the legal reality is quite different. My client has decided to be generous, though. We are prepared to offer you 60 days to vacate voluntarily, and we won't pursue damages for 15 years of illegal occupation." "Let me see those documents." Karen held the folder protectively against her chest. "These are certified legal documents, Mr. Rodriguez. I'd be happy to have my attorney explain them to you, but the facts are clear. This land belongs to the Morrison Family Trust, and I'm the designated trustee." Marcus's mind raced. Henry Morrison had died 3 years ago, and his son Jake lived in Seattle. They'd never mentioned anything about a trust. Jake Morrison never said anything about this when his father passed. Jake Morrison was never the legal heir. The trust was established years before his father's death, designating the property to more deserving parties. Karen's mask was slipping, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "I want to see those papers." "I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation," Karen said, stepping closer. "This isn't a negotiation. You're trespassing on private property. I could have the sheriff here within the hour." "Then do it." Marcus crossed his arms. "Because I'm not going anywhere until I see proof that what you're saying is true." Karen's perfectly composed facade cracked for just a moment, fury flashing in her eyes. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm trying to handle this civilly. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The only thing hard about this is believing that someone could waltz onto my property and claim it's theirs without showing a single legitimate document. These documents are bullshit." The voice came from behind them. Both Marcus and Karen turned to see a woman approaching from the direction of the road. She was in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and dirt under her fingernails. She wore hiking boots, cargo pants, and a University of Montana t-shirt. "Excuse me," Karen said icily, "but this is a private conversation." "Not anymore." The woman extended her hand to Marcus. "Dr. Sarah Chen, Paleontology Department at the university. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." Marcus shook her hand, grateful for the interruption. "Marcus Rodriguez. This is my property." "I know," Sarah said, her gaze fixed on Karen. "I've been conducting a geological survey of this area for the past 6 months. The university has all the proper permits, and we've been working directly with Mr. Rodriguez." Karen's face flushed red. I don't care what surveys you're conducting. This woman has no business interfering in a legal property dispute. Actually, I do. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed them both a detailed map with GPS coordinates. See, the thing about geological surveys is that we have to be extremely precise about property boundaries. We've verified Mr. Rodriguez's ownership through 3 separate sources, including the county assessor's office. That's impossible, Karen snapped. The county records are incomplete. Are they? Sarah's voice was calm, but there was steel. Underneath. Because I have copies of the original deed, the property tax records going back 20 years, and a signed letter from Jake Morrison confirming that his father sold this land to Mr. Rodriguez in 1987. Karen's briefcase snapped shut. With a sharp click. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough to recognize forged documents when I see them. Sarah stepped closer to Karen, and despite being several inches shorter, she somehow seemed to tower over the other woman. I also know that what you're attempting is called criminal fraud. How dare you? The letterhead on your documents is wrong, Sarah continued, her voice gaining confidence. Williams & Associates Real Estate Development doesn't exist. I checked. The address you listed traces back to a UPS store in Bozeman. Marcus felt a surge of vindication mixed with rage. You're trying to steal my land. Karen's mask fell away completely now, revealing pure venom. This land is worthless anyway. 40 acres of rocks and dirt. You're fighting over nothing. If it's worthless, why do you want it so badly? Sarah asked. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She clearly hadn't expected to be challenged by someone who knew how to verify her claims. I think you need to leave, Marcus said quietly. Now. This isn't over, Karen hissed, backing toward her car. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I think I do, Sarah said. You're someone who thought she could intimidate a man into giving up his home. Someone who figured a rancher wouldn't have the resources to fight back. Karen fumbled with her car keys, her composure completely shattered. You're both going to regret this. The only thing I regret, Marcus called after her, is not calling the sheriff the minute you stepped foot on my property. Karen's sedan kicked up a cloud of dust as she sped down the driveway, leaving Marcus and Sarah standing in the sudden quiet. Thank you, Marcus said finally. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up. Sarah smiled, but it was tight with concern. Don't thank me yet. People like that don't give up easily. She'll be back, probably with a different approach. What do you think she really wanted? I don't know, but it wasn't just the land. There's something else going on here. Sarah looked out across the vast expanse of Marcus's property, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Something worth enough to her that she was willing to commit fraud to get it. Marcus followed her gaze. The land stretched out before them, seemingly barren except for the occasional scrub brush and the distant mountains on the horizon. It's just empty land. Always has been. Maybe, Sarah said quietly. Or maybe it's empty in all the right ways. As they stood there, neither of them noticed the small, angular piece of bone protruding from the disturbed earth near the fence line, a fragment that had been loosened by Marcus's morning repair work. It gleamed white against the dark soil, ancient and patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. 3 hours later, as Marcus was fixing lunch, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Hello. Mr. Rodriguez. The voice was female, but not Karen's. Younger, nervous. This is Jennifer Collins from the county assessor's office. I need to speak with you about your property immediately. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What about it? Someone filed a claim this morning challenging your ownership. The paperwork looks problematic. Can you come in today? We need to get this sorted out before it goes any further. I'll be right there. As Marcus grabbed his keys and the folder containing his property documents, he had no idea that across town, Karen Williams was making a phone call of her own. It didn't work, she said into her phone, pacing frantically around her hotel room. There was someone there, some professor who saw right through the fake documents. The voice on the other end was calm, authoritative. Then we moved to phase 2. Are you sure about this? If we are wrong about what's buried out there, we are not wrong. The geological survey confirmed it. That land is sitting on one of the largest fossil deposits in North America, potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Karen stopped pacing. And if Rodriguez won't sell, then we'll have to get creative. One way or another, that land will be ours. As Karen hung up the phone, the next morning brought an unseasonable chill to the Montana plains, and with it, a convoy of official-looking vehicles that made Marcus's blood run cold. He watched from his kitchen window as 3 black SUVs and a sheriff's cruiser pulled up his driveway in perfect formation, like something out of a military operation. Sheriff Tom Bradley emerged from the cruiser first, a man Marcus had known for over a decade, someone who'd shared beers with him at the local bar and whose daughter Marcus had helped search for when she'd gotten lost in the woods 2 summers ago. But today, Tom's face was stone. Behind him came Karen Williams, but she wasn't alone. She was flanked by 2 men in expensive suits and a woman carrying what looked like surveying equipment. The final person to emerge was someone Marcus didn't recognize, a tall, thin man with silver hair and the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing the word no. "Marcus," Tom called out as he approached the house. "We need to talk." Marcus stepped onto his porch, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's this about, Tom?" "There's been a court order issued regarding your property. These folks have some kind of injunction." Tom's voice was uncomfortable, apologetic. "I'm sorry, but I have to serve you with this." The tall stranger stepped forward, extending a manila envelope. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Attorney General Harrison Blackwood. This is a temporary restraining order preventing you from making any alterations to this property pending resolution of the ownership dispute." Marcus tore open the envelope, his hand shaking slightly as he read. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. He was effectively barred from his own land until the court sorted out Karen's fraudulent claim. "This is insane," Marcus said. "Yesterday her documents were fake. Today she's got a court order." "The county found some irregularities in your original deed filing," Karen said smoothly. She'd regained her composure overnight, and now she stood with the assured posture of someone who held all the cards. "Nothing personal, you understand. Just proper legal procedure." "What irregularities?" Marcus demanded. Blackwood consulted. "A tablet. Missing signatures on the original transfer, questions about the chain of title, potential issues with the surveying markers from 1987. Quite a mess, really." "That's impossible. I had everything verified when I bought the place." "Paperwork from 37 years ago can be unreliable," Karen said with false sympathy. "But don't worry. Once we complete our assessment, I'm sure we can work something out." "Assessment of what?" "Just a routine geological survey," the woman with the equipment said. "I'm Dr. Patricia Vance from Morrison Geological Services. We need to establish the exact boundaries and composition of the land." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "You can't just come onto my property and start digging around." "Actually, we can," Blackwood said, producing another document. "Emergency survey order, signed by Judge Morrison this morning." "Morrison." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "As in Henry Morrison." "Judge Patricia Morrison," Karen corrected. "Henry's niece. She has a vested interest in seeing this matter resolved properly." The pieces were falling into place, and Marcus didn't like the picture they formed. "This is a setup. You're all working together." "That's a serious accusation," Blackwood warned. "I'd be careful about making statements you can't prove." Before Marcus could respond, another vehicle came roaring up the driveway, Sarah's dusty pickup truck. She jumped out, carrying a metal detector and what looked like excavation tools. "What's going on here?" she demanded, taking in the scene. "Dr. Chen," Karen said coldly. "How convenient. We were just explaining to Mr. Rodriguez that he'll need to vacate the premises during our survey." "Like hell he will." Sarah strode over to Marcus's side. "You can't just kick a man off his own land based on fraudulent documents." "The documents have been verified," Blackwood said smoothly, "by multiple sources." "Sources you probably paid off," Sarah shot back. "I've been researching your little operation, Mr. Blackwood. Morrison Geological Services is owned by a shell company that traces back to Blackwood Industries. Your geological survey company, your law firm, and I'm betting that Judge are all connected." Karen's face flushed, but Blackwood remained calm. Dr. Chen, you're making very serious accusations. I hope you have evidence to back them up. I'm working on it. Sarah turned to the woman with the surveying equipment. Dr. Vance, isn't it? I'm curious about your geological training. Where did you get your PhD? Dr. Vance shifted uncomfortably. University of Colorado. Interesting. Because I called the University of Colorado yesterday. They have no record of a Patricia Vance in their geology program. Ever. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's confident mask began to crack, and Blackwood's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. There must be some mistake, Dr. Vance stammered. The only mistake, Sarah said, her voice rising, is thinking you could run this con without someone checking your credentials. Sheriff Bradley, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. Now hold on a minute. If there's fraud involved, there's no fraud, Blackwood interrupted quickly. Just a misunderstanding about academic records. Universities make clerical errors all the time. Do they? Sarah pulled out her phone. Because I also called the Montana State Bar Association. Funny thing, they have no record of a Harrison Blackwood either. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Marcus watched as the carefully constructed facade began to crumble around Karen and her associates. That's impossible, Blackwood said, but his voice had lost its authoritative edge. Want to know what else is impossible? Sarah continued, gaining momentum. That court order you're waving around. I called Judge Morrison's office this morning. She's been in Hawaii for the past week, attending her daughter's wedding. She hasn't signed any emergency orders. Tom Bradley's hand moved instinctively toward his service weapon. Is that true? The group of conspirators exchanged panicked glances. Karen took a step backward, her eyes darting toward the SUVs. There's been a misunderstanding, she said quickly. We should probably. Nobody's going anywhere, Tom said firmly. I need to see some identification from all of you. Real identification. As the situation deteriorated around them, Marcus noticed that Sarah was no longer paying attention to the confrontation. Her eyes were fixed on something near the fence line where he'd been working the day before. She walked over slowly, almost in a trance, and knelt down near the disturbed earth. Oh my God, she whispered. Her metal detector was in her hand, though Marcus hadn't seen her turn it on. It was emitting a steady, low beep that grew more intense as she swept it over the ground. Sarah. Marcus called out. What is it? She didn't answer. Instead, she set down the detector and began carefully brushing away dirt with her hands. The argument behind them continued, voices getting more heated, but Sarah seemed oblivious to everything except what she was uncovering. Then she stopped breathing. Protruding from the earth, gleaming white against the dark soil, was something that made her 15 years of paleontological training seem inadequate. It was massive, nearly 6 inches long, curved like a dagger, with serrated edges that had been designed by millions of years of evolution for one purpose: killing. Marcus, she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. You need to see this. The tone of her voice cut through the argument like a blade. Everyone turned toward her, and the shouting died away as they saw her kneeling by the fence. She stood up slowly, cradling something in her dirt-stained hands. When she turned around, her face was pale with shock and wonder. It's a tooth, she said, her voice trembling. A Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth. And it's perfect. The silence that followed was absolute. Karen's face went white as paper, and Marcus felt the world shift beneath his feet. How much would something like that be worth? He asked quietly. Sarah looked at the massive fossil in her hands, then at the disturbed earth around the fence line, then back at Marcus. If this is what I think it is, if there's a complete skeleton down there. She paused, trying to find words for the impossible. Marcus, you could be sitting on one of the most significant paleontological discoveries in history. How much? He pressed. Millions. Tens of millions. Maybe more. Sarah's eyes were bright with excitement and fear. A complete T-Rex skeleton. Sold at auction for over $30 million a few years ago. But this could be bigger. Karen made a sound like a wounded animal. All her careful planning, all her fraudulent documents and fake credentials, suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't been after worthless land. She'd been after a treasure beyond imagination. That's impossible, she said weakly. The geological surveys showed nothing. Your geological surveys, Sarah said, her voice hard as granite. The ones conducted by your fake company with fake credentials. You knew, didn't you? You knew what was buried here. I don't know what you're talking about. The hell you don't. Marcus stepped toward Karen, fury building in his chest. You tried to steal my land because you knew there was something valuable buried on it. Prove it, Karen spat, but her defiance sounded hollow. Sarah held up the massive tooth, letting the morning sun catch its ancient surface. I think this proves itself. Blackwood, or whoever he really was, made a move toward one of the SUVs, but Tom Bradley was ready for. He media circus descended on Marcus's property like a plague of locusts. Within 2 hours of Sarah's discovery, his quiet ranch had transformed into a chaotic maze of news vans, camera crews, and paleontology experts who'd driven from universities. Across 3 states. Marcus stood on his porch, still clutching the coffee mug he'd been holding when his world changed forever, watching reporters set up equipment on his front lawn without permission. The T-Rex tooth sat in a protective case on his kitchen table, but its discovery had unleashed forces he was only beginning to understand. Mr. Rodriguez. A blonde reporter thrust a microphone toward him. Channel 7 News. How does it feel to know you're sitting on what could be the most valuable dinosaur fossil ever discovered? I don't know, Marcus replied honestly. Yesterday, I was worried about paying for a new roof. Today you're telling me I might be a millionaire. Sources suggest the skeleton could be worth over $50 million, another reporter shouted. Do you have any plans for the money? Before Marcus could answer, Sarah appeared at his side, her face grim. We need to talk. Inside. Now. She guided him through the crowd of reporters and into his house, closing the door firmly behind them. Through the window, they could see Karen Williams being escorted to one of Sheriff Bradley's patrol cars, her hands cuffed behind her back. Her fake associates were already loaded into a second cruiser. This is insane, Marcus said, setting down his coffee with shaking hands. 3 hours ago, I'd never seen a dinosaur bone in my life. Now every news station in the country is parked in my yard. Marcus, we have a problem. Sarah's voice was tight with worry. A big one. Bigger than people trying to steal my land. Much bigger. She moved to the window and pointed toward the black SUV she'd noticed earlier. It was parked at the edge of his property, just beyond the media circus. That vehicle doesn't belong to any news organization. I've been watching it for the past hour. Nobody's gotten out, but I can see movement inside. Marcus joined her at the window. Maybe they're just curious onlookers. Curious onlookers don't drive $40,000 SUVs with government plates. Government plates. Look closer. The license plate starts with GSA, General Services Administration. That's a federal vehicle. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What would the federal government want with my dinosaur? Sarah's expression darkened. That depends on who's inside that truck and what they know about paleontological law. What do you mean? Marcus, there's something I haven't told you about dinosaur fossils. Something most people don't understand. She turned away from the window, her face serious. If that T-Rex skeleton is on federal land, or if it's determined to be of significant scientific importance, the government can claim it under eminent domain. But this is my land. I own it. You own the surface rights. But dinosaur fossils exist in a legal gray area. Depending on how they interpret the law, they could argue that a discovery this significant belongs to the American people, not to one individual. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. So they could just take it. They could try. And with the right legal pressure, the right judges. She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. A sharp knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Through the window, they saw a woman in a crisp business suit flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a federal agency handbook. Mr. Rodriguez, the woman called out. Agent Victoria Marsh, Department of the Interior. We need to speak with you about your recent discovery. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. Here we go, Sarah muttered. Marcus opened the door to find Agent Marsh holding a leather credentials case. She was in her 40s, with graying hair and the kind of authoritative presence that suggested she was used to getting her way. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm here to discuss the paleontological significance of your find. May we come in? Do I have a choice? Of course you do. This is just a friendly conversation about your responsibilities as the discoverer of what appears to be a nationally significant fossil. Sarah stepped forward. Dr. Sarah Chen, University of Montana Paleontology. Department. I'm the one who made the discovery. Agent Marsh's eyes sharpened with interest. Dr. Chen, I've heard about your work. You've published several papers on late Cretaceous fossil preservation, haven't you? I have. Then you understand the scientific importance of proper fossil handling and preservation. A discovery like this can't be left to amateur enthusiasts. What exactly are you suggesting? Marcus asked. I'm suggesting that this fossil requires immediate professional intervention. We are prepared to provide full excavation services, proper preservation, and scientific study, all at no cost to you. And in return, Agent Marsh smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. In return, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you've contributed to one of the most important paleontological discoveries in American history. That doesn't sound like I get to keep anything, Marcus said flatly. Mr. Rodriguez, fossils of this magnitude don't belong to individuals. They belong to science, to humanity. Sarah stepped between them. Agent Marsh, with all due respect, that's not how the law works. Fossils discovered on private land belong to the landowner, period. The law is more complicated than that, Dr. Chen, especially when we are dealing with specimens of this significance. What significance? Marcus demanded. All we've found is one tooth. Agent Marsh and her associates exchanged glances. Mr. Rodriguez, I think you're underestimating what you've discovered. Our preliminary analysis suggests this isn't just any T-Rex fossil. What do you mean? The size of that tooth, the preservation quality, the geological indicators. We believe you may have discovered the largest, most complete T-Rex skeleton ever found. We are talking about a specimen that could rewrite paleontological textbooks. The room fell silent. Marcus felt his knees go weak, and he had to steady himself against the doorframe. How? How could you know that from one tooth? Sarah asked suspiciously. Agent Marsh hesitated for just a moment, long enough for Sarah to catch it. Because we've been monitoring this area for months, Agent Marsh admitted. Satellite thermal imaging detected anomalies in the soil composition that suggested significant fossil deposits. You've been spying on my land. Marcus's voice rose with anger. We've been conducting routine geological surveys. When the thermal imaging showed what appeared to be a large skeletal structure, we began investigating the ownership of the property. Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. That's why Karen Williams showed up. You told her what was buried. Here. I have no knowledge of any Ms. Williams. Bullshit. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Agent Marsh a photo she'd taken earlier. This is Karen Williams, the woman who tried to steal Marcus's land yesterday using forged documents. She claimed to be working for a geological survey company. Agent Marsh studied the photo, her expression carefully neutral. I don't recognize this person. Maybe not, but I bet you recognize the thermal imaging data she was using to target this property. The two federal agents behind Marsh shifted uncomfortably, their hands moving closer to their service weapons. Dr. Chen, Agent Marsh said carefully, you're making some very serious accusations. I'm stating facts. Someone in the federal government identified this fossil site and leaked that information to Karen Williams. She was probably supposed to steal the land quietly, then hand it over to the government for a fraction of its value. That's a conspiracy theory. Is it? Sarah's voice was getting louder, more confident, because it would explain why Karen was so desperate to get Marcus off his land. It would explain the fake court orders and the fabricated credentials. She wasn't working alone, she was working for you. Agent Marsh's composed facade finally cracked. Dr. Chen, I strongly advise you to be very careful about the accusations you make. The Department of the Interior has significant resources at its disposal. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that interfering with a federal investigation. can have serious consequences. Marcus had heard enough. Get out. Excuse me. You heard me. Get off my property. All of you. Mr. Rodriguez, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. You people knew what was buried on my land, so you sent that Williams woman to steal it from me. When that didn't work, you decided to come in with badges and threats. Agent Marsh's expression hardened. Mr. Rodriguez, this fossil is too important to be left in private hands. One way or another, it's going to be properly studied and preserved. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face, while Marcus took an involuntary step backward. Did you just threaten to kill me? Marcus asked quietly. Agent Marsh seemed to realize she'd gone too far. I misspoke. What I meant was, I know exactly what you meant. Marcus pulled out his phone. Tom, it's Marcus. I need you back at my place. Now. And bring backup. As Marcus ended the call, Agent Marsh's two associates moved closer to him. Put the phone down, Mr. Rodriguez. Like hell. Sarah grabbed the protective case containing the T-Rex tooth. Marcus, we need to get out of here. Now. Nobody's going anywhere, one of the agents said, his hand now openly resting on his weapon. But Sarah had noticed something the federal agents hadn't. Sheriff Bradley's patrol car was already coming up. The crack of the rifle shot split the morning air like thunder, and the kitchen window behind Marcus exploded in a shower of glass. He dove to the floor as Sarah screamed, the protective case containing the T-Rex tooth skittering across the hardwood. Sniper. Sheriff Bradley's voice boomed across the property as chaos erupted outside. Deputies scrambled for cover behind their vehicles while reporters fled in panic, their cameras abandoned as they ran for their lives. Agent Marsh and her associates had vanished. One moment they were standing in Marcus's living room making threats, the next they had melted away like shadows, leaving only the echo of their menace behind. Marcus. Sarah crawled across the floor toward him, glass crunching under her knees. Are you hit? I don't think so. He touched his face and came away with blood, but it was just from flying glass. The tooth. Where's the tooth? Sarah spotted the case near the overturned coffee table and grabbed it. Got it. But we can't stay here. Another shot punched through the front wall, sending splinters of wood flying. This time the bullet embedded itself in the stone fireplace, inches from where Marcus's head had been moments before. They're trying to kill us, Marcus said, the reality of it hitting him like a physical blow. No, Sarah said grimly, studying the trajectory of the bullets. They are hurting us. Both shots were warning shots, designed to drive us toward the back of the house. Why would they want us in the back? Sarah's face went pale. Because that's where your truck is parked. They want us to run. As if to confirm her theory, they heard the distant rumble of engines starting up. Through the shattered front window, they could see the black SUV racing across the property toward the rear of the house, kicking up clouds of dust. Tom. Marcus called out. Can you hear me? We are pinned down. The sheriff's voice came back, strained with frustration. Shooters got us covered from the tree line. We can't get to you. Marcus looked at Sarah, then at the case containing their 65-million-year-old discovery. They're not going to stop, are they? Not until they have what they want. Sarah checked her phone. No signal. They're jamming communications. This is a full military operation. For a dinosaur bone. For what that dinosaur bone represents. Marcus, I don't think you understand what we've stumbled into. A complete T-Rex skeleton isn't just valuable, it's a symbol. Proof that America has the world's greatest paleontological treasures. In the wrong hands, it could be used to justify massive federal land grabs across the West. Another shot rang out, this one striking the back door. The message was clear, time to move. We need to get to the basement, Marcus said. There's an old root cellar that connects to a drainage tunnel. It comes out near the creek, about 200 yards from the house. Can we get there without being seen? If we are lucky. They crawled toward the basement stairs as more shots peppered the house. Behind them, they could hear the sound of vehicles getting closer, engines revving. As they positioned themselves around the property, the basement was dark and cool, filled with the musty smell of decades-old preserves and forgotten memories. Marcus led Sarah to a narrow wooden door hidden behind stacks of canning jars. "My grandfather built this during the Cold War," he explained, pulling the door open to reveal a tunnel barely wide enough for one person. He was convinced the Russians were coming. "Turns out he was just 60 years early and wrong about the nationality," Sarah muttered, clutching the fossil case to her chest. They squeezed into the tunnel, Marcus leading the way with a flashlight he'd grabbed from the basement workbench. The passage was cramped and humid, carved directly into the earth and reinforced with rotting timber that creaked ominously as they passed. Behind them, they heard the sound of boots thundering across the floor above. Agent Marsh's people had entered the house. "Where are they?" a voice shouted. "Check the basement," came the reply. Marcus and Sarah moved faster, the tunnel seeming to stretch endlessly ahead of them. Water dripped from the ceiling, and more than once Sarah had to fight back claustrophobia as the walls seemed to close in around them. Finally, they saw lay ahead, the tunnel's exit near the creek. Marcus pushed aside the rusted grate that covered the opening and crawled out into the bright Montana sunshine, then helped Sarah climb out behind him. They were on the far side of his property, hidden from the house by a grove of cottonwood trees. From here, they could see the full scope of the operation arrayed against them. The black SUVs positioned around the house, unmarked helicopters circling overhead, and what looked like a mobile command center parked on the access road. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. "How many people did they send?" "Enough to start a small war," Sarah replied. She opened the case and looked at the T-Rex tooth, its ancient surface gleaming in the sunlight. All of this for something that died 65 million years ago. "It's not about the dinosaur," Marcus said quietly. "It's about power. Control. They can't let a regular person like me have something this valuable because it proves the system doesn't work the way they claim it does." Sarah was about to respond when her phone buzzed. Somehow, they were far enough from the jammers to get a signal. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. "Don't answer it," Marcus warned. "Dr. Chen." The voice that came through the speaker was Agent Marsh's. "I know you can hear me." Sarah's hand trembled as she held the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Dr. Chen, you and Mr. Rodriguez have put yourselves in a very dangerous situation. We are prepared to offer you safe passage off the property in exchange for the fossil." "Go to hell." "I understand your anger, but you need to think rationally. You're surrounded by federal agents with authorization to use lethal force. You have nowhere to run." Sarah looked at Marcus, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped on his own property. "What guarantee do we have that you won't kill us the moment we hand over the fossil?" she asked. "You have my word as a federal agent." "Your word." Sarah's voice rose with fury. "You just tried to murder us." "Those were warning shots, Dr. Chen. If we wanted you dead, you'd be dead." Marcus grabbed the phone from Sarah's hand. "This is my land, and that's my fossil. If you want it, come and take it." "Mr. Rodriguez, you're making this much harder than it needs to be." "Good. I hope it's impossible." He ended the call and turned to Sarah. "We need to get word to the outside world about what's happening here." "How?" "They're jamming everything." "Not everything." Marcus pointed toward the creek, where an old wooden bridge crossed the water. "There's a ham radio operator about 3 miles downstream. Old Pete Kowalski. If we can get to him, Marcus." Sarah grabbed his arm, pointing back toward the house. "Look." Smoke was rising from his kitchen window. They had set his house on fire. "Those bastards," Marcus snarled, starting back toward his home. Sarah caught him. "You can't. It's what they want, to flush us out into the open." "That's my home. Everything I own is in there. And everything you are is right here." She held up the fossil case. "Don't let them win by turning you into a victim." As they watched, the smoke grew thicker. Marcus's house, the place where he'd lived for 15 years, where he'd built his life and planned his future, was being consumed by flames while federal agents stood by and watched. But Sarah had noticed something else. The helicopters were landing, disgorging more agents in tactical gear. This wasn't just about recovering a fossil anymore. It was about eliminating witnesses. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I don't think they ever intended to let us live. Before he could respond, they heard the sound of dogs barking in the distance. Tracking dogs. The hunt had begun in earnest, and they were the prey. The creek, Marcus said, his voice hollow with loss as he watched. His home burn. We go downstream. The water will mask our scent. They waded into the cold mountain water, Sarah holding the fossil case above her head as the current tried to sweep them away. Behind them, the smoke from Marcus's house rose like a funeral pyre into the endless Montana sky. But as they struggled against the current, neither of them saw the drone that had been tracking their every move, its camera transmitting their location back to Agent Marsh's command center.